Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. Seeking the truth, exposing the lies. Remember, together, we are unstoppable. Keep on digging. Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Welcome to a podcast with me, Dave, and Another Thing, and Travis. We're going to be talking about what is next for the U.S. of A. Hashtag Red Pill.
How's it going, my friend?
Travis, what is happening?
Not much. How's sunshiny Florida treating you?
What's that?
How's sunshiny Florida treating you?
Oh, I'm in California, but it's sunshiny.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I guess the perks of California is the weather, and the drawback is being, in California.
The weather and the women. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything else is going to absolute shit. Hey, so I noticed just a little pre-thing before we get rolling. I noticed in the last episode that we had some shuffling noises. I think a lot of it was me because I tried those darn earphone headphones.
Gotcha.
But just a FYI, like I'm gonna try to be totally like sedentary or whatever this time.
That's okay, man. Yeah, I try and mute myself in between just to keep my stuff to a minimum here. Just because I got dogs that may sound off through the floor into the basement here.
Cool. Yeah, just any kind of like shuffling comes out a little bit loud. Like I had to do quite a bit of editing on our last one to cut a bunch of stuff out.
Nice.
But whatever. It is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, super excited for this talk.
Me too. I wasn't able to put the link in, unfortunately. It wasn't letting me edit it, but aside from that, I think we're pretty much ready to roll here.
Well, can you add me as a whatever administrator, and then I can try to drop it in there?
Let me see if I can here.
I think you just tap on my face.
I could open his profile here.
I think you just tap on my face and it should give you the option, make admin.
It gives me the option to open your profile, report you, or block you. Those are my options.
Okay, whatever. Thanks, Stereo. Do you see an option for like either where Russia, China, and India form an economic, either right where that is or below that? Do you see a thing that says link?
I do not. It was giving me originally the chance to do it before, but now it's not. So it would want me to do a whole new plan talk.
Oh well. I can link that. I can link that after the fact and on Anchor.
All right.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Well, let's jump on into it, I guess, huh?
Yes, sir. First off, welcome, Mr. Jack. Welcome, Cooper Goddess. I think we got some people anticipating this one. All right, Dave, why don't you kick us off here?
All right. Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Good to see everybody. Good to be here. Good to be breathing, and happy to be talking with my friend Travis about what I think is some pretty important stuff. America has been, whatever. I don't hate this country, but there's a lot of room for improvement, right? So there's some new news down the pipeline. Get to that in a moment. But this country has been in decline basically since the 70s. Wages have stagnated. Corporate profit has gone through the roof. CEO pay has gone through the roof. So we're going to get into all this. But I would like to just introduce ourselves first. My name is Dave Smith, and Another Thing with Dave. I do a podcast on all podcast platforms in 46 countries now, and we're happy to have you here. Travis?
Glad to be with you, Dave. Glad to be with you, Dave. Pretty much everything you'll hear me talk about is how politics is downstream of culture, cultural is down, and unfortunately, the individual is stuck living in an incredibly political world right now. So I break down all those things on my talks here on Stereo. You can find me on Getter, or you can just simply follow me here on Stereo. I'll be branching out to other media forms soon. Glad to be with you, Dave, and doing this talk today.
Absolutely. I'm pretty excited for it. And what spurred on the idea for me was I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole and there's this woman, Kim Iverson, that I've been watching on YouTube for quite a while. She was just an independent, had an independent show bringing like news on the reel. And then she got picked up by The Hill because obviously she was doing some great work. And now she's on The Hill, so you can check her out there. She's the left-leaning voice, or the voice of reason on The Hill. They got Ryan Grimm too, as you know, like your corporate voice, I guess. But yeah, so I was watching this program, and it was called World Hegemony, a new anyway, World Hegemony, and basically what's going on is China, Russia, and India have announced that they are forming an alliance called the Sides. And they specified that this would be a new world order. Cracked me up that they used George Bush's terminology. But what they're seeking to do is what they've done is form a military and trade alliance. And basically, they're not going to be pushed around anymore. They're thinking about, well, they've negotiated with Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia may soon start selling oil in the yen. And I'm not sure if people are aware, but we've got this thing called the petrodollar that we established, I believe, right after World War II, which is an agreement with Saudi Arabia that they would only sell oil in dollars. So anybody has to, say you're in Italy, you have to exchange your currency for American dollars to then buy Saudi Arabian oil, right? So that props up our economy in a huge way, because as you all know, we don't really have a manufacturing sector anymore. We seem to have, low skill jobs, service jobs, and then professional jobs. And that middle ground is rapidly disappearing. I also heard that Elon Musk plans to roll out automated cars within 5 years, and that will then eliminate all driving jobs. 50% of non-skilled labor are driving jobs. So we're looking at an absolute sea change. And, I don't want this country to turn into a third world country, at least while I'm in it, but this has been a long time coming, and we haven't done anything to prevent it. So that's kind of a summary of where I stand on it. What do you got, Trav?
Yeah, so I watched the link you sent me, and immediately the first two things that came to my mind when I heard this sounds like two things: Cassius Belli and Cassius. I've never heard the word; I've only ever read it. Foedorus, I believe, pretty much calling for an unusual alliance. Naturally, China and Russia wouldn't naturally be allies. In fact, we could have very well given Russia a reason to stand against China, side up more with us. I mean, if you think about it before, as soon as we started going after ISIS hard and obliterating them, they kind of were like, okay, and backing off. They weren't making really much aggression on anything. You know, we gave them access to be able to do more oil trade. Still had to do it in petrodollar. Now we've kind of dropped all over it. And I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, I might have the date off by a few days here. February 4th, I believe, was the day that they put this little memo out. And then, what do you know it, February 24th, well, I shouldn't say the invasion began, but the continuation of the invasion of Ukraine began. And you've seen China standing back, being awfully quiet, but still trying to play both sides, be extra supportive of it. I think this paper shows us everything we need to know about what's going on. My theory has, I believe I mentioned it on our last show together, Dave, was simply that China is pretty much waiting for a time in April when it sees to be able to get over to Taiwan, slow down to be able to give them a chance to go and get, quote unquote, the reunification of China and consume Taiwan. And you look at other countries that aren't really listening to it, such as North Korea, which is pretty much, upheld by the strong, mighty hand of China at that point. They don't really have too many other allies. North Korea wants to reunify its peninsula, and as far as materials and precious metals and actual chip inhibitors, the largest supply is in Taiwan. The second largest is over in South Korea. Yeah, I see this spiraling out of just being these three countries. But you look at this, and it's not looking too good. India could easily provide the cheap labor as China's costs are continuing to spiral out of control. But it sounds like they already knew that what our response would be. They know us better than what we know them to be. So I'm a little uneasy on that. It seems like they did their homework, and our country has been asleep at the wheel. What do you got?
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a few things to touch on there. As far as ISIS goes, not a lot of people are aware that we were actually supporting ISIS to fight against the Assad, government. We called it a regime. I guess whenever we don't like a government, we call it a regime. So to fight against the Assad regime, we were backing ISIS, which was the big bad boogeyman that we created. Let's roll it back a little bit. How did ISIS get created? It's the military officers and the police officers of Iraq that were fed up with us coming to their country, disbanding both of those branches of government, throwing their country into chaos. So those people, they became the quote unquote insurgents, right? All of a sudden you're laid off from your job and you're watching your country go to hell. So give me 1 second. Sorry, I had to cough right there. But so that's the basis of ISIS. Now, how did it blow up like it did? Well, when we left Iraq, we literally left all of our weapons and vehicles there with the keys in them. What could go wrong, right? The official military explanation for that was that, oh, well, it's going to cost too much to ship them home. We have no problem paying to ship them there, right? But we don't want to ship them home. Okay, so following that logic, if that is the train of thought, why wouldn't you put them all in one massive pile and drop a bomb on them, eliminating the possibility for anybody to utilize those vehicles and weapons? If you remember, all the footage we were seeing on TV was ISIS in these like brand new military Toyota pickup trucks and stuff, and with U.S. hard, heavy duty military equipment. I mean, we left, howitzers or whatever, these giant giant military weapons and guns, and it's just unbelievable. And then the thing you were talking on about the alliance, yeah, it is. It's going to include all of Indochina, Indonesia. China is working on, what is it, the Beltran Initiative or whatever. They're basically rebuilding Silk Road and building massive high-speed rail systems throughout that region to transport goods and services. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, well, we're probably going to go bomb those and make them unusable. And then touching on the labor aspect, that China has announced that they're planning on getting labor from Africa. So I think India, they're planning on helping bring India up and then looking to Africa for cheap labor for all of those countries.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a case we should be looking at. And you pretty much, the way the West has been fighting a lot of wars is by going and destabilizing other countries, by supporting uprising rebellions, whether they already be ones that are there, or planting and making our own there and handing it off as somebody else's. I mean, that's basically how Al-Qaeda got started. That's how ISIS got started. And if you look over in Ukraine, I got to be really careful. It's a shame that I have to be this careful on how I approach this. So I'm going to gingerly dance around the word without saying it. But, thank you, Dave. Pretty much the U.S., there's confirmation that we've been supporting certain groups that would identify themselves as much more right-leaning, certain socialist nationalists, might be described as, the word starts with an N. I'll let you all figure that out, but I know Stereo's a little band happy as soon as you even so much as mention the word, even if it's in an appropriate context. But so you look at that, that's probably where we're going to get bitten our rear end in about 40 to 60 years down the road here, now that we've been arming them. And you look at what Zelensky, I believe is how you say his last name, is president of Ukraine. First off, big Second Amendment guy. I believe everyone has the right to defend themselves against self-defense and against the attack of their own nation. That's why I personally stand on it. So they were a little late to the game in dishing out weapons, but they literally were giving it out to anyone. You could walk up and go and they would say, yep, here's a rifle, find out exactly what you want. But they have a lot of anti-plane, anti-tank machinery that random civilians have also been taking. So you look at that, you look at we've been funding that certain group that we can't really mention, but is rather prominent over in Ukraine. And you look at the fact that pretty much they're handing out weapons, massive, massive damaging weapons to anybody that pretty much comes in and says, "Hey, I like a weapon," and they just have to allege that they will defend. There's been concerns already from people, reporters that have been on the ground about uprising warlords, crime lords, pretty much causing a new mafia. But if you take that in conjunction with the group that we're currently funding right now over in Ukraine, it looks like we could very well be having an old enemy rear its head real soon, within, I'd say, 30, 40, 60 years, somewhere like that. So that's something I would already be on the watch out for. Another thing I want to address also, we've talked about the petrodollar. It looks like how we have here in the description, a 1-2 heavy punch to the petrodollar and the global American empire. We have the yuan being, at least in heavy talks with and high consideration of becoming the new currency here for the petrodollar. And Russia is making massive moves to buy up a bunch of valuable metals, gold, silver, trying to, I mean, the West isn't hanging on to them, so they're pulling it together. And there's been speculation. I heard this on the Blaze with Glenn, that they're looking to be the new, within the next couple of years, the new gold standard. So you have the U.S. who got off the gold standard. I believe it officially. We made moves in, I believe, 62 or 63, and it became official in 65 to be off the gold standard. So we not backed up by gold. We were backed up by oil up until about a few months ago, I should say about a year ago, and now we literally have nothing. Our allies and our enemies alike will be going to have one of two currencies, either the ruble or the yuan. So economically, this is in China's playbook. They would much rather fight a war economically than they would with soldiers, but they're gaining both abilities. And if you cripple the U.S. To the degree that it looks like this could do, any sort of an offensive or defensive move from the U.S. would be short-lived and pretty much in vain. So I personally am a little nervous. Born and raised in the 90s, but now it's kind of like ever since I got to, for the first few months of my life, watch the destruction of the USSR. No memories of it. I think I was like 3 months old. So, and ever since then, it's pretty much all been downhill from there. So those were the best years of my life. Was a few months old, and the U.S. has just been rapidly declining. So I don't know really how much longer we have. I'd like to have something to pass on to my kids, but I don't know, man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, that's you hit on so many points there. I was born in 1967, the summer of love, and I've seen this country just gradually decline ever since. I'm a firm believer that as a result of the near revolution in the 60s, there were major changes made. One of those being to stagnate employee wages so that people can't take, a week or two off and travel to Washington, D.C. in massive numbers to protest, right? It's no accident that, a lot of Americans have 2 or 3 jobs. That is not by accident. It's no accident that we did away with free college education, right? These are not accidents. And same, it's not an accident that fuel prices are through the roof. The companies are greedy, of course, but our government is letting that happen. With a signature, any president could put in place an anti-price gouging initiative, right? Especially in the middle of a quote-unquote pandemic. So many things all in alignment, and it's a huge puzzle, right? But once you go down the rabbit hole, you start connecting these dots. And if you pull the lens back, you start to see a pretty consistent picture of where we're headed. And it does not look good. But like I said, this is not created overnight. This has been a long time coming, and our government has done absolutely nothing to stop it, which leads me to believe somebody is okay with this happening. Speaking of the gold standard, yeah, what could go wrong? Right now, our money, after eliminating the gold standard, our money wasn't tied to anything. So literally monopoly money. The only thing that backs the dollar is your belief, our belief in the dollar, right? And then the petrodollar, after World War II, or whenever that was signed into being, that solidified oil as the thing that backed the dollar. But now what do we got, right? It's basically monopoly money. A lot of people don't know, but during COVID, in the early days of COVID, the Federal Reserve pumped something like $4 trillion into the U.S. economy just to prop it up. Well, that's money that's not based on anything. They're just printing paper. And then we can pull back the lens a little bit more, and you look at the origin of the Federal Reserve. A lot of people think it's a federal organization. It is not. It is an alliance of for-profit companies, banks, that formed a cabal, basically, and are in collusion to make money off of the U.S. Treasury, right? So why couldn't the Treasury just print our money? Oh, no. The Federal Reserve has to print it, and then they loan it to the Treasury with 25% profit. So as soon as you get $1, it's only worth 75 cents, right? Like a penny now costs 2 cents to make. So this decline has been a long time coming. And like I said, nobody's A, talking about this in the government, and B, doing anything about it. Another thing that blows my mind is, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I've gone third party with the People's Party. Urge everybody to check them out, www.peoplesparty.org. They don't take any corporate money, and they're all about ending this two-party hegemony. But, oh man, I lost my train of thought. But the Kim Iversen show that sparked my thought here is Kim Iversen, China and Russia declare a new world order. And this was posted on YouTube 2 weeks ago. Back to you, Travis.
It's extremely concerning. I want to also preface everything we're saying here. I'll probably mention this all throughout the show a couple times just to make sure that none of us get in trouble. Since we're talking a lot about economics and money and stuff like that, I want to make sure everyone knows I am not a financial advisor. I'm not an economist. I am a guy with a big mouth and an app called Stereo who absolutely loves this thing. So that being said, do your own research. What we say is not gold, but neither is the US dollar. Take what we say with a grain of salt. But I think pretty much Dave and I do a pretty good job of trying to back up all of our stuff with sources, reliable ones as well. This is all just a lot of speculatory stuff at this point. That being said, I personally have been buying up silver at this point with the way things have been going. I've been getting it in regular ounces, and I'm about ready to start buying things it comes in little 10th ounce coins, because it's a little hard when everything goes to crap to just, snap up a 1 ounce coin. But that's personally what me and my family's doing, along with just being a lot more self-reliant. We got some chickens on the way. We got tomatoes and vegetable plants we're getting ready to, and trying to upgrade a bigger lot size and a bigger home here to being a little more self-reliant. Because at this point, like you said, the US dollar, it's all about how much faith you have in it. And really, when everyone sees how jobs can't be filled, when they see the supply chain crisis just cracking at the seams, and everybody stopped talking about it, but that still has not been resolved. Over out towards where you live, over in Cali out there, I understand the ports. The big thing about that is if there's like one stuck out there, it's all hands on deck. We have an emergency. There's hundreds of them, and it's been like that all throughout 2021, in through this year in 2022. I've seen videos where it sounds like freaking gunshots going out. Turns out it's not. It's just that there's giant crates, giant warehouse bins that are filled with things like tomatoes, and because they've just been waiting so long, they've been rotting, fermenting, and just the gases in there have been causing hinges to blow off, and then you just see like fermented tomato juice spilling out all over the place. It is an absolute mess. So not only are we paying for all this stuff, but we're not getting it. It's being destroyed. Yeah, you wonder why there's empty shelves. We can't get our act together here, unfortunately.
That's a really great point. I was listening to, and I want to preface also, I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert on anything. This is my opinion based on what I've looked at on YouTube, what I've read, but I try to find the most legit sources that I can, and also to counter them with other sources to make sure that there's a common thread that many people are discussing. So, once again, don't take my word as gold. Go do some research yourself. That's why I put that link in the title there. And I'd be happy to, suggest investigative journalists that I'm a fan of. Some are Abby Martin, Lee Camp, Glenn Greenwald, Max Blumenthal. The Jimmy Dore Show is a great resource. He has authors and reporters on all the time, digging deep, usually countering the lamestream narrative. But I also wanted to talk on the supply chain. I was listening to economist Richard Wolff on KPFA 94.1 FM. You can also get that online, kpfa.com. And what he was saying is that the supply chain is all BS. The supply chain collapse is all BS. And that the only reason these ships are sitting in the port is because they're waiting to get the price they want. And this kind of makes sense, right? Because to unload a shipping container, a ship full of shipping containers, it's one man in a crane. So where does COVID come into play? That guy's not interacting with anybody. He's 500 feet up in a massive crane booth unloading these things. And then there's other mobile cranes on the ground that move them in and stack them, and then another crane to load them onto a truck. So these are all one-man operations. So where is the supply chain collapsing? And then truck drivers, they're in a truck by themselves. So the only thing that would make sense is, oh, well, they can't unload it at the final destination at the store or whatever. What? Really? How? So if you break it down to the minutia, it falls apart, right? But once again, this is from an economist, Richard Wolff. Look him up. He's saying it's all corporate greed, because it's the law of supply and demand. If the supply goes down, the price goes up. He's saying this is manufactured decreasing of supply so that corporations can maximize their prices and maximize their profit. And I see that to be true on a local level, right? I've got a local grocery store here, Oliver's. They've got 3 or 4 stores in this county, and they claim, their advertisement is local food for local people, right? And they're a grocery store with a burrito taco shop in there. So all the product that are in their burritos come from their grocery stores, which obviously they're getting a good price on, right? They're not paying what a burrito store, what a restaurant would be paying, because they're buying wholesale as a grocery store. And I'm sure that they're using chicken that's about to go bad, pork that's about to go bad, beef that's about to go bad, right? So it's a way of using product before it turns to waste. So very smart business practice. But now at that place, a burrito went from $7.99 to $10.99. So riddle me this. How can you charge $10.99 for a burrito when you're getting all the ingredients at wholesale prices, and they still sell a whole chicken for $9.99? So you can get a whole chicken cheaper than you can get an effing burrito? Doesn't make sense. There's way more at work here than supply chain. And I just wanted to talk. I wanted to hint on farmland as well, right? I just did a 1 minute, 1 minute video on Instagram the other day while I was at the doctor's. I was looking across the highway, and there's all this beautiful farmland with a housing development on the left. And you can tell that it's encroaching and that the housing development is going to grow like it has in many areas of this county. And it's going to eat up this beautiful, fertile farmland. Where are we going to get food? We can't always get it from over there, right? The Central Valley of California, their wells, their aquifers are going dry. That area is not, and it's been overproducing for way too long, right? Because of greed, once again. California provides something like 1/5 of the world's produce. What could go wrong? How about California producing produce for California? At least for the United States, right? We could ship avocados around the country, but every place should have farmland. Every community needs farmland. Otherwise, you open yourselves up to the weak link in the chain. And in this case, it's corporate greed and supply chains or whatever. So, if we're relying on our oranges to come from Brazil, rice to come from China, eventually we're giving those people all of our power. Like, for example, if China wanted to, with one decision, a signing order or whatever, however they do it over there, an executive signing order, could cease all exports to the United States, how many stores would close down instantly? Walmart, you name it. Like everything here is made in China now. Literally, they could shut us down without even having to fire a single shot. And we've set that up by allowing, thanks to Bill Clinton, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and other legislations that have outsourced our manufacturing, right? Detroit used to be the gleaming beacon of capitalism worldwide. Now it looks like a third world country, as does parts of Ohio. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have drinkable water, and that was done on purpose, by the way. They only saved $200,000, and now they created a problem that's going to cost billions to resolve because they're going to have to replace the piping in a whole city. So what could go wrong? Oh my God. And where's that money going to come from? Back to farmland. Bill Gates has been buying up farmland at a feverish pace. He's now the single largest owner of U.S. farmland. We know he's a huge advocate for GMOs. And anybody that hasn't really done much research about nutrition, farming, the World Health Organization said the only way to meet the needs of a growing population is sustainable, regenerative, organic farming. So the whole GMO myth, it's BS. The whole commercial agriculture thing is BS. I also watched a documentary called Dirt. Highly suggest that to everybody. What that discusses is that on average, the earth only has 4 inches of topsoil. All life on earth is based on topsoil. Topsoil provides us with life, right? Without that, you can't grow anything and there is no life. There's a little bit of life in a desert, but you're not going to see trees and the diversity of flora and fauna. This is a huge problem. And like I said before, this shouldn't happen overnight. And all these things are happening in concert, right? So now you've got this alliance, China, Russia, India, probably soon to be Korea as one united place. And this is all changing. And that leads me to what gives the United States the right to tell Korea that they can't be united? What gives us the right to go interfere in the Ukraine conflict by giving them $13 billion in aid? When we have 500,000 homeless people here, the average American can't afford a $400 emergency and is like, 2 or 3 paychecks away from homelessness. We're in a huge economic crisis here, but we've just had our blinders on and our earplugs in and just, waving flags. That's not going to work for much longer. Back to you, Jack.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on what you said about the supply chain and the cost of things going through the roof. I kind of grew up all around farmland. I was born and raised, spent the first 20 to 30 years of my life in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, also known as Amish country. I've been surrounded by that my whole entire life. You can't get fertilizer on there. You're in deep, deep trouble. And one of the main factors, if you're going to do just all natural organic, the way some farmers do, is cow manure. So I bring that up for 2 reasons. Number one, the largest world supplier of fertilizer in the entire world comes out of 2 places combined: Ukraine and Russia. We're not getting any fertilizer anytime soon. They've stopped producing that, and I don't foresee them cranking up the plants anytime soon to get that stuff out to us. Number 2, largest supplier of wheat to the entire world comes from, you guessed it, Russia and Ukraine. That's being shut off. Putin's not looking at sharing it anytime soon with the rest of the world, given how everybody's kind of turned on him, understandably. I'd be pretty pissed too about people invading my country. And obviously, Ukraine's a little too busy to go and just start putting out fertilizer. So you couple those 2 things together here. Number 1, fertilizer for our plants and all sorts of agriculture, including stuff that would grow for cows to eat. We're in deep trouble if we don't have that there. And a lot of people are starting to see that. And on top of that, you also have wheat being a massive feed for animals. Animals help produce manure. Manure is a huge component in fertilizer. You couple those things together, and then farmers have to consider, okay, maybe I need to cut back on certain livestock, send a couple of cows out earlier to the slaughter than what would normally happen. So Now you have also less fertilizer coming in, but you have less food for the beef to be coming through. All that stuff together, prices increasing. On top of that, we have the technology to preserve our food. It's not that hard. If we have a season where we have access, we have multiple different ways of storing stuff together, whether it be massive can, mylar bags, freezing things, when it can be done on massive scale levels. The government does not allow us to do that. Most people don't know that, but if you, as a farmer, that being your main source of income, farming only, you've got a lot of stuff to contend with the government. And if you go and you try and save for like cherries, they're very persnickety as far as conditions for them to be able to be ripe and to be plentiful throughout the year. It's very hard to get a perfect year for those. You have a year where you have an abundance of cherries, or you have an abundance of wheat, or abundance of rice. You are selected to be able to sell a certain amount. Everything else must be discarded. If you go and you store your own food and you freeze it or do whatever form of storing to preserve for the next year, for the next harvest, you're committing a federal crime. You can lose your entire farm like that. The government needs to be able to get out of the way. But like you've said before in the last podcast, every solution to a problem is another manufactured crisis. I believe I'm paraphrasing you at least on that. As far as supply chain, that's part of the problem. Isn't as much big greedy corporations, although the mega corporations are a lot to blame. You also have to look at the government forcing us to have our own crisis.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Part of what I believe is that the corporations now control our government. So I think it's one and the same. I think we're totally agreeing, but just from different sides of the same coin, maybe. Touching on what you were saying, going back a little bit, yeah, you can't say the N word that ends with an I because you'll get banned. I did a talk on Ukraine and I was banned from all social media. And then all of a sudden, when I took that talk down, I was able to post again. I was able to access Stereo. Stereo had no idea what was happening. So this was a banning above Stereo. Some entity in Stereo had no idea what was going on with my account. They've never been able to tell me. They've escalated my case 3 times, still can't tell me. I still can't access mobile data. I can only do this podcast on Wi-Fi. So I have to be parked out in front of a coffee shop or something, or at home. Speaking of fertilizer, so a lot of fertilizer, like after World War II, they wanted to figure out how to use chemicals of war, because, oh my God, these corporations are making so much money, right? With nitrogen and this and that. A lot of those chemicals in turn were used to create fertilizer, artificial fertilizers. Like you said, the only real legit fertilizer is urine and excretion from grazing animals. You don't want animals that eat meat. You want grazing animals, any kind of grazing animal. And I've watched many documentaries on this because I would love someday to have a little piece of land where I can produce food. And the most economical way and regenerative way to do this is you keep the animals corralled in a small location so that per square foot, there's a lot of urine and feces, which then turns to fertilizer. Then you move that corralled area daily or weekly, depending on the size of it. But our current method of farming, I live in a farmland area, Sonoma County, California. They just have cows on 50 acres. The cows are free to roam. So they're munching down the grass equally in every area. So no area is allowed to completely recover. And also the urine and feces is scattered over that massive area instead of concentrated in a small area where it could do a lot of good. So then what they do in turn is they take the feces, the cow poop, and they soak it in massive containers of water, and then they spray this poop water on the grass as fertilizer. And we call it the Sonoma aroma because on a hot day, it's like, oh my God, the smell of cow poop permeates everything. So there's that. What you said about canning, oh my God, that blows my mind, right? Why aren't farmers allowed to can, to flash freeze? So there's a plan there. There's an agenda there, right? No farmer should be forced to discard perfectly good food products. That's insanity. But what it's doing is it's controlling the supply and demand to keep the cost at a certain level. That's the only thing that makes sense. Back in the Great Depression, they were even canning dandelions because dandelions apparently have a really high protein content. We look at them as weeds now and spray toxic Roundup, which is proven to cause cancer, on our property, and that stuff never really goes away. It goes into the water table. This has been proven. There's a perfectly good food source that grows naturally everywhere. But, we've been brainwashed to think that you got to eradicate it. You got to get rid of it. You got to spray poison on it, even if that poison, may put you personally at risk. There's a great documentary. Once again, I'm a documentary fiend. If anybody else is, on my YouTube channel, and another thing with Dave, I have a whole list of must see under my playlist, must see. And there's 1,246 documentaries that I've watched that I feel the world needs to see. One of them is The World According to Monsanto's. They've had a concerted effort over the decades to consolidate farming, to mandate that farmers buy their seed. And it's even gotten to the point where if you have an organic farm and there's a GMO farm using Monsanto's seed across the street, you can't sue the Monsanto farm for polluting your organic farm, but Monsanto can sue you for using their product without a license. Wow. So, once again, the justice is stacked on the side of corporation and the haves, and the have-nots are just kicked to the curb. You also mentioned something about the weapons in Ukraine being just handed out. And I've seen videos of this, right? Just crates of, machine guns and stuff just opened up for the public to come and grab. So that brings up that word again that we can't say. But imagine what could go wrong. I was describing earlier, what armed ISIS was us leaving guns in Iraq. So once the immediate crisis is over, where are those weapons going to go? Whose hands are they going to fall into? What could go wrong? Oh my God. It's maddening. You spoke of cherries also. I watched a show about cherries, and it wasn't a political thing at all. It was this guy, Heavy D. He's a, heavy mechanic guy, and real interesting podcast that he's got, or vlog, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. But he went to visit a cherry farm just to show you how cherries are farmed. And it's insane. If it rains on the cherries, on the cherry trees, when there's actual fruit hanging, they have to bring in a helicopter to hover over each cherry tree to knock that water off, or their crop will go to hell.
I used to work on a cherry farm, and it will literally, I'm not being figurative when I say it, the cherry will literally explode. I've had days where we would come back. It was a small farm. We couldn't afford helicopters just flying over it, but there would be bits of cherry, and the smell would be awful, as something related to almost, I would compare it to dead fish. Yeah, they will blow up, and then all of a sudden you'll have rows and rows of trees that have these beautiful Bing cherries, nice and red and juicy, ready to be picked. I would help assist people in getting set on where they can pick, parking, and all that other stuff. And it would just blow apart, and the stench was awful. So they literally explode. They are extremely persnickety. But go ahead, keep going.
I just wanted to wrap it with the canning thing. Like, in what world does it make sense to not allow a cherry farmer to can their excess crop? That's insanity. Are you kidding me? Canned cherries would be good for years. And once again, in the Great Depression, that was encouraged, right? It was hard to get fresh food because of the Dust Bowl. Most of our farmland went to hell. So canning was everything. How could it be a bad thing? So this is overarching control, I believe, of the corporations infiltrating our government. I forget what the legislation was. Maybe you can help me out with this. But, it became legal to donate unlimited amounts of money to super PACs. So basically, corporations can now bribe our politicians. And then there's the revolving door between politicians and Monsanto. I did a college paper on this and got an A+ on it. But Donald Rumsfeld, one of the architects of the project for the New American Century, where they talk about U.S. hegemony and how we're going to secure that for the next 100 years, which is procuring all the world's remaining resources through military efforts, which we've done. But prior to being in the government, Donald Rumsfeld was the head of the Searle Corporation, SEARL. And what they developed was aspartame. It was originally banned as a poison. Once he got into government, he legalized it to go into foodstuffs, and that's how it got into gum, diet soda, all this stuff. Aspartame has literally been scientifically proven to cause brain lesions. So that's the level of care. That like basically, I think this has been a concerted effort going back to where I started, that our government will go to any lengths to not let another 1960s like uprising happen. I mean, look what happened to Occupy. Look what happened to the BLM movement. They got quashed violently for peaceful revolt. Quashed. People beaten, shot in the eye with fake bullets. 7 reporters were permanently blinded for being shot in the face with quote unquote non-lethal rounds. These are reporters. This is the stuff we point the finger at China for, at Russia for. And then another little side note of that, Obama incarcerated more reporters and reporters' sources under the Espionage Act than all presidents before him combined. So this is a concerted effort by the left and the right, because they're basically beholden and owned by corporation. That's all I got on that, Trav.
All right, cool, Dave. Hey, I did do that research on what you were talking about here. And we actually just passed the 10-year anniversary. I just read up on it fast I can. You can thank that ruling to Citizens United. It was court case Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. You won't believe what I'm about to tell you here. This is about Anthony Kennedy. In the court's opinion, Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote that limiting, quote, independent political spending, quote, from corporations and other groups violates the First Amendment right to free speech. The justice who voted with the majority assumed that independent spending cannot be corrupt and that the spending would be transparent, but both assumptions have been proven to be incorrect.
Wow. Right.
So,
and
yeah.
that brings to mind the ruling that corporations are people and have all the rights of a person. But a corporation doesn't live in a community, so they don't care about the good or the betterment of that community, right?
Yeah, and you run into that problem when you consider that globalization has happened. Anybody that isn't, outside of the U.S. and is just limited to the U.S., in my opinion, you're considered a small business. Every other corporation out there, all of them are either worldwide or spanning out through many, many countries. You pretty much, at this point, you have foreigners voting and spending money. It's amazing to me that we have limits on how much, as an individual person, that we can donate to someone's political campaign. But as far as corporations, yeah, it looks like that's a completely different thing, even though they're considered to be individuals as well. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is all intentional. Citizens United strikes again. Back to you, Dave.
That brings to mind the Hunter Biden laptop issue, right? It was the news, the lamestream media, as I like to call it, was trying to debunk that there was any truth to that. Well, it's come out that it was absolutely true. And now the details are coming out on how he was in collusion with foreign governments, which is a crime. But what's going to happen there? Do you think he's going to do any time? Probably not. Nepotism and corporate control, it's just unbelievable. We got a message, let me play, from Jay Rue, and then back to you.
Big shout out to Dave. Dave, you are a warrior in my eyes. Keep fighting the good fight. Shout out to Travis, dropping some gems as well. Yeah, loving it, guys. Keep up the good work.
Much love, Jay Rue. Much love, man. It helps to hear that because, sometimes it feels like, I don't know about you, Travis, but sometimes it feels like I'm just screaming at a wall, talking to myself. And then when I meet somebody like you, it's really soul feeding. It gives me the wind in my sails to keep going, because I can't tell you how many times I've just thrown my hands up in the air of like, man, I'm having no effect. What good is it to talk about it? Well, what good it does me is it gets it out. And it's, like, I believe holding stress within yourself, that's going to be food for cancer or some other self-attacking disease. Dis-ease. When you're not at ease, you're in dis-ease, right? So I think even if we're just talking to ourselves in a phone call about this stuff, it helps us, right? It helps us to go on another day, to be a nicer person the next day, because I'm not stewing on all this stuff. What do you think, Trav?
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And I'll take that and also jump with it on that and say, you and I probably, if we decided to dedicate a phone to it, we'd probably find that we have a decent amount of political disagreements on both foreign and domestic issues. But what the people really don't seem to want is when we look at these issues that are affecting all of us. I'm pretty far to the right. You're a part of the People's Party. But you look at the parts that unite us here, the stuff that really, really matters, everything else is just kind of, would fall back to just friendly banter back and forth over beer at best. But this is the stuff that people really have to get behind because parties, change, power changes back and forth. Bureaucracies might say the same, but the political parties go back and forth. And as far as just they want us to, in my personal opinion, this goes right back to cancel culture. They don't want you to know that there's other people like you because, like you said, puts you at dis-ease. It makes you rack your head against the kitchen counter, screaming, "What the hell's going on with my TV?" So yeah, they really seem to not want people to be able to just get together and talk about the most important issues. And when the authority goes and tries to shut you down, you're probably maybe not on the bullseye, but you're probably hovering around target somewhere. Yeah, this is part of why we have the freedom of speech. Back then, it was the concern about people being able to go and meet in saloon, taverns, bars, and be able to talk with one another. Right now, we've it's been a little give and take. We can when we're on completely different ends of the country, I can talk to you over in California and you talk to me in the exact same time. Social media and the phones posting and stuff like that pretty much become the taverns and the saloons and the bars of the 21st century. Yeah, this is where people get together. This is the new commerce where everyone can talk, spread their ideas. So when you see people starting to clamping down, you just have to envision what this truly means. This would be like them going out to different places of work, organization, restaurants, and actually you don't really have to think about it. You look at it, look at 2020. They did shut that down in person. They did make people feel alone. And when people did speak up about stuff going on with COVID, about different things happening, you got shut out real quick. So I think they want to make sure that everyone feels alone personally. And the more we can connect with one another and help each other out, you don't even have to physically connect. I'll probably never meet you, Dave, at this point, with you being all the way across the world. And love to sometime. But this is the way that people can connect. We can start making changes. You absolutely have to take a stand and make changes at the local level. Start with your neighborhood. Start talking to your neighbors. Start breaking everything that's past digital and get to face with your neighbors if you can. Breaks out into your local areas. If you have kids, you might want to consider running for your local school board. Start talking about things that are happening with your kids, the education that they're getting, because they're the future at this point. And then you branch out more into counties, state, and then we go into national eventually. But this is where that all happens, is local. And the nice thing is we can all get on the same page for our locals, this new technology. But we got to fight to be able to have this talk going. I know that's not really anything that was mentioned in our conversation talk, but just felt like putting that out there after what you said. Back to you, Dave.
Absolutely. That's an umbrella that encompasses everything that we've been talking about. And I couldn't agree more. I got a few points that I just wrote down to hit on about this. Like, wow. And when you were in the middle of that, this guy rode by on a mountain bike with a neck gaiter on. He's by himself riding a bicycle. There's no cars on the road, but he's living in fear and he's got this damn neck gaiter on while he's riding a bicycle. Are you kidding me? So be afraid, stay afraid. That'll keep you from when you're in fear. If you're in enough fear, you're paralyzed, right? So, and that brought another point to mind. An educated, united populace is the government's worst fear. I forget whose quote that is, but that has stuck with me ever since I heard it. And yeah, I'm left leaning. I'm not a Democrat by any means, because I figure that that's just a centrist party. That's a corporate party. I believe the Republicans are as well, but I don't want to get into that because once again, that's division. And my goal is to unite people on the things that affect us all. But in my own family, I've been called right wing. So I've gone so far left that people are calling me right wing. Like, wow. And those are people that are buying the lamestream media narrative. I recently watched a program, The Film Archive on YouTube. It's historical stuff. And there was an ex-CIA guy on there. and he was talking about his experience, personal experience in the CIA over 20 years. He said 75% of what the CIA does is propaganda and misinformation to guide public thinking. He also went so far as to say the CIA has a role in editing or writing Hollywood scripts, even for blockbuster movies. He also went so far as to say that they have plants or employees of the CIA at news stations. So I call CNN the CIA News Network. I don't know if many people know, but MSNBC, that's Microsoft NBC. So you're getting basically the Microsoft slant or Bill Gates's slant on the news there. And then what you said is, if you get censored by the government, you might be on target. Well, one of my favorite shows is the Jimmy Dore Show, because he's constantly hacking away at the lamestream media's narrative. And when he got written up, there was a hit piece done on him by CNN, and he said, "Yeah, baby, I'm a threat." Like, hoo-hoo, I'm obviously getting somebody's attention because they're trying to discredit him, right? And that leads me to the isolation, shutting down restaurants and bars. Originally, they weren't even allowed to do outside dining, right? A hair salon couldn't even have one person at a time, even if you signed a waiver. Like, are you kidding me? We're enacting things that we point the finger at authoritarian governments for. You should be able to sign a release and be like, yes, I want to get my hair cut. I'll enter at my own risk, right? But no, we weren't able to do that. Restaurants, bars, everything except liquor stores and grocery stores were shut down. Riddle me this: liquor stores left open. Oh, why? Because you could just go home and drink yourself silly. Then you're not going to be thinking too much. You're definitely not going to take proactive measures. And you've been eliminated from the discourse at that point. And that brings me to be afraid, stay afraid. We'll tell you what to do. The government's your daddy. They're there to love you and protect you. I don't believe any of that. They just want us to be afraid, stay afraid. The examples of this are, with the COVID mandate and shutdown, they didn't tell you what to do to be healthy. They never once did the lamestream media say, take a bunch of zinc, increase your vitamin D, increase your vitamin C, eat onions, eat garlic. I never heard that once, right? And then you got back to the Iraq invasion, or 9/11, excuse me. It's code yellow, it's code orange, it's code red. Were we ever told what to do if it's code yellow? No, just be afraid, stay afraid. Don't think for yourself. And that leads me to deaths of despair. You can look this up on YouTube. Deaths of despair are the leading cause of death now for white middle-aged men in the United States. And what this is suicide due to depression, death due to alcoholism and drug overdose, which leads right to depression and feeling helpless. So this has manifested itself in these ways. And now, for the first time in our country's history, the life expectancy has gone down, right? So this is insanity. And once again, all these things, if you look at them individually, it's like, that seems kind of extreme. That seems kind of extreme. But then if you're curious enough to go down the rabbit hole, do a little research online on YouTube, it's all out there. And once you pull back the lens, you can start connecting these dots, and you don't just see a bunch of random stars. Now you see a constellation.
100% agree with you on that. I don't know if you've seen the movie with Chris Hemsworth and that one guy from that Nickelodeon show, Drake and Josh. Josh, I think his last name is Bell. But they had done a remake of New Dawn. Now, if you're familiar with the book or the original, the premise of the story was originally China has invaded, and it's all about pretty much a foreign army occupying, and now these kids have to band together and fight back. That was not approved because we at that point were trying to stoke extra relations with China. It was frowned upon to be against China. We were handing over more power to China, but we were okay about it being the Koreans. So even though the Koreans, by no stretch of any sort of imagination, being able to pull it off, we just had to, suspend our Hollywood belief and just say, okay, sure, the Koreans have amassed a massive army to be able to fly over, evade all of our raiders, and just drop troops on the ground and occupy the U.S. all over. That just being one of them. But yeah, they're in absolutely everything. I remember, I forget what the name of this girl was, but there was a video leaked of her where she didn't realize she was on camera, but a reporter that was saying we had everything about Epstein stuff, but they just wouldn't. These companies just would not let us run the story, and she's all depressed because she knew that this story could have been out there sooner. And of course, as soon as that stuff leaked, she's fired. So yeah, propaganda. People think it's just, oh, this is quote fifth generational warfare. I personally don't believe in the what people are talking about as far as fifth generational warfare. Propaganda has just always been a massive part of war, period. It's not its own separate warfare. It was a big thing in the Revolutionary War. It was a big thing in the Civil War. It was a big thing over in with us fighting Vietnam on both ends of it. It was a massive part of our invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. And you look around, the story keeps changing. I know that they're really picky about this on Stereo. I'm going to mind my mouth here, but you get a lot of conflicting stories when it comes to Russia-Ukraine story. One moment it's hooray, the Ukrainians are really stomping on the neck of the Russians. Russia looks like it's defeated, and the next day is, oh my God, Russia's taking over another power plant. Oh my God, Russia's gone farther. They've killed more people. It's the end of the world. They can't pick a narrative at this point because the string's been pulled and the curtain's been revealed a little too much. People are starting to see who's running things. And because I also think it has to do, unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, but you start to see propaganda is not having its effect on race. We've been divided on sex. We've been divided on political lines. We've been divided on religion. And now recently they threw in a new one on pretty much vaxxed or not vaxxed or whatever stance you take on the COVID issue. They've divided us on so many different lines. We are not a nation united anymore. We are fractured. And so you cannot possibly put out one existing propaganda story to go and unite everyone. So they have to put out a bunch of separate ones. Pretty much what's happened with the propaganda state, because we're so divided, you can't have a divided people. They've worked so damn hard on dividing us, and now that they've done it, their propaganda is falling apart. So there's good news in that. The bad news is we're divided. Back to you, Dave.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that us believing that we have differences that are important, I think that's part of this manufacture to divide, right? Because I mean, everything we're talking about, bro, everything you said, I've been like, oh hell yeah, and like you're saying the same thing to a bunch of things I say, maybe not all, but I totally agree with what you're saying. The narrative changes about the propaganda, but the goal is the same. Be afraid, stay afraid, right? Because if you're afraid, you're not thinking clearly, you're not being proactive, you're not going to be a community organizer, you're just going to sit in your house, watch TV, drink too much, take too many drugs, and die early. The Nazi minister of propaganda, I forget what that guy's name was, but he said this thing, and I'm paraphrasing. I'm talking back in World War II though. And this is all just historical stuff that I've read. And this was a quote of that guy. I don't think it was Goebbels, but it's somebody that their minister of propaganda said, the people will believe any lie. The bigger the lie, the better. And you must repeat it often. Right. So is that not what we're hearing? And then you've got like, really, who cares about gay marriage? Really? So I had this epiphany once, like, oh, by being anti-gay marriage, you're basically kind of saying that you just want gay people to go have sex in a park somewhere, but not have a meaningful relationship. So is that really good for society in general? No. The gender thing, who really cares? 1 minute it was biological and the next minute it's how you feel. Who really cares what you want to call yourself? Like, I identify as a redwood tree. Okay. And then there's the vax, no vax. Really? So, and it goes as slight as like, I'm a Niners fan, you're a Raiders fan, right? I'm a Giants fan, you're a Dodgers fan, There's so much minutia to it. It permeates every aspect of our society by now.
Yeah,
Back to
100%.
you.
I live pretty darn close to the Mason-Dixon line. My in-laws are just on the other side. You could stand on the front porch, load your cell phone into a slingshot, and fire it over into Pennsylvania. And they're I'd say about 20 minutes away. One thing where you were saying even about the liquor store over in Pennsylvania during the height of the COVID lockdowns, you couldn't even do that. And there were stadies all set out around 83 was the main highway traveling back and forth in between where I'm at least, between Pennsylvania and Maryland. Hello, the 1930s called and they want their bootleg back.
Wow.
Yeah, the prohibition pretty much went back into effect. So people would sneak out, go into their car by themselves with nobody else around them, even put on a mask in their own car, which I think you're a little nutty to do that, but you do you, man. Drove across state lines, bought liquor, and when they drive back, there would be stadies there waiting for them, and they would do pullovers, and they were getting tickets, and some people even had booze confiscated. So riddle me this, Dave. As it stands currently right now, marijuana is one of the scheduled substances. It's federally banned in the U.S., but we could have our pot dispensaries opened during the lockdown, but you couldn't go to church. One guaranteed, protected under the First Amendment, pretty darn specifically speaking about it. The other, federally banned, but you could do that, but not the other. It was, I mean, they can't keep their story straight. They can't figure out their approach. They're divided amongst themselves because they divided us, and you can't get people united on one lie anymore. And I think that's where we're going to win. And I think ultimately what we're looking at is maybe more. I think if we're going global, we're going to see a more balkanization of more countries throughout the world. And best case scenario for the U.S. is maybe a balkanization of the U.S. You'll have maybe the Northeast, Southern, East, Appalachia states, some West Coast states. But we're not united anymore as a people, as a nation. So it's going to have its bad effects. But the good news is they can't really nail us with their big lies anymore. Back to you.
Amen, brother. Oh my God. See, I completely, 100% agree with everything that you just said. This is not a left issue. This is not a right issue. This is an awake person who's paying attention issue and rights for all people. I want to go ahead, before I jump any deeper, I want to go ahead. We got 3 messages. Let's run these down real quick.
Greetings to you, gentlemen. I just want to say I really appreciate the two of you for having this conversation. It needs to be had more often. It's very sad that this room isn't filled right now with listeners because most Americans have no idea what is actually coming. They really think that things are going to go back to what it was prior to 2020. And the things that you gentlemen have presented this evening, I too share in these conversations quite often because I have it has been placed upon my heart that there's a definite urgency to get this information out to whoever's willing to listen. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for your service this evening. Dave, I followed you on IG and your YouTube page because you mentioned something about documentaries. I'm a documentary junkie, so definitely want to check out that list. I've probably seen most of them on there, but thank you, gentlemen.
Oh man, DJ All Good. Much love, brother. Please send me a message on IG so I can follow you back. And let's stay in communication. We got to expand this army of free thinking people. We got 3 more. Let's run.
Hey, another thing, just click on my profile. That's Joseph Goebbels, which he was one of high rank officer. He works for Hitler, and he runs basically the propaganda. It's always that way. And just people just didn't see it. That's what's last, 20, 30 years applications of brainwashing, simple mind people that they believe in everything they see, but the reality is much worse and way different. They think they saw and they think they, seen around.
Amen.
Exactly, that's so because this, government is run, like you guys said, by corporations and those they lobbying and supporting millions of dollars of those, crocs, and That's why the people saying like, oh yeah, our politicians stupid or whatever. Well, they're not stupid. They're just following orders and getting paid. If the people don't understand that, well, too bad.
Yep, great points.
Hey, thank you guys. Another thing, and Travis, so you guys definitely on the point, and this should be on a national television, so people could fucking start actually waking up, because it's just it's trashes, man. What's going on in the world?
Yeah, much love to you two guys, and I just wanted to say, the first gentleman said, I'm sorry, your name disappeared from the messages. But first gentleman was saying, like, it's a shame that we don't have more people listening. Oh yeah, but if we were doing a talk about Will Smith and the slap heard around the world, there'd be 20 people in here chiming in on what they think. And right, look at that level of division. Now you're a Chris Rock fan or you're a Will Smith fan. You can't be both anymore. You got to choose a side. And people will not shut up about this meaningless drivel, right? Who cares? Mr. Red Tricks just mentioned, corporations are stupid. That's what we were told about George Bush. Oh, he's a bumbling idiot. He's stupid. No, he's not. He's from one of the most prominent families in the United States. He's far, far from stupid. You might not like the guy. I don't. But he's far from stupid, right? Come on now. He went to Princeton. That's unbelievable that they had basically border patrol between two U.S. states. Now that reeks back to World War II. Where are your papers? Show me your papers, right? Like, oh my God, once again, we're doing something right now that we're pointing the finger at other countries like that totalitarian government is doing X, Y, Z. We need to go and do regime change. Really? We're doing it. And you also mentioned the fracturing of the United States into regions. Well, everybody Google the Amero. There's already a minted coin that they're waiting to roll out, right? So the North American Union, the Asian Union, the African Union, this is already planned, but they're just trying to roll it out, right? So they are going to fracture the United States into multiple regions, do away with our borders, and move to a currency called the Amero, which is good for Canada, the United States, and Central and South America, I believe, all of the Americas. So unbelievable. Once again, it's right in front of our eyes, but nobody's talking about it. At least not on a major national platform, right? And that leads me back to one other point, and then back to you, Trav, is one of the most popular shows on TV, at least NBC's best rated show for over 20 years, was The Donahue Show. He was the precursor to Oprah Winfrey, but he talked about real stuff. And he got shut down, kicked off the air, and his program eliminated after he spoke out against the Iraq War. The best rated show on NBC for 20 years. The host was fired and his show eliminated because he did one show about being anti-Iraq war. Back to you, Trav.
Yeah. Even with that sounds a lot. I unfortunately don't know who you're talking about, but I do know of the Dixie Chicks. Pretty much exact same story. Took a stand against Bush and his war with things, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end, and they pretty much crumbled as a band shortly thereafter. It wasn't until pretty much Green Day where you could start speaking up on things. Had they released that album a few years ago, I think the exact same results would have happened, because it wasn't popular until right up until he was going up against Carrie, who, surprise, surprise, they were both in the same sorority or fraternity together. I don't know. I've never went to college. Skull and Bones. So, yeah, you have a false choice. You can have water or agua, pretty much was the way it was being let out. We were going to get the exact same thing no matter what, up until we were getting ready to go in and invade more countries. You could not speak out against that. Norm Macdonald was another big anti-proponent of that war, and also bringing out stuff that our elites were doing. Big proponent on bringing to light the fact of the Clintons and their kill streak going on. I guess back to you on that. I 100% agree with you. They're trying to shut down any sort of dissenting voice. This is absolutely nothing new. Actually, I'll go on one more point here. They had the Bureau of Censorship back over in World War II. Now they presented again fear, and in all honesty, reasonable fear of that you were going to be speaking to spies at that point. That you could speak with a Japanese spy. Now, that worked out real well, even for people who were Chinese or from Vietnam who were living in the U.S. They had to pretty much do, people make fun of preppers, but they had to literally, a bunch of them, bug out in the woods because all they would go is, hey, person with slanted eyes, they're clearly with the Japs, let's get them and lock them up in camps. So it had a lot of families broken up, and if you were any sort of Asian, you took to hiding. So, but yeah, it was the Japanese could be watching, or the Germans were behind every door. You look at old World War II movies, that was a massive plot of everybody in a suit might be a German spy coming after you. And so whether they had the Bureau of Censorship was actually a thing back then. That's where you get the terminology, loose lips sink ships, because we actually did have ships sink. However, whether that was due to loose lips or due to inept people in service or due to people just wanting a war or saying we need to be able to get into this war before it's too late, so let's let something happen. That's all up to. So maybe there was a need for censorship, maybe there wasn't. Regardless, the ability, even if you were so much as speak out against the war, if the government didn't snap down on you, we had a cultural cohesion back then where society would snap down and ostracize you. So that's one of the things. I know you had experience about societal crackdown being harder than the actual government crackdown when it comes to things with the Rona here. But yeah, it's starting to affect a lot of people. We're seeing the whole new thing. It's just dressed up in a different suit this time. It's got a lot more bling. Back to you.
Amen, brother. So once again, we've been talking for, almost an hour and a half. We haven't disagreed once. So that says a lot, right? You were talking about, false flags, like what might have drawn us into World War II. Oh, well, I believe it was the sinking of the Lithuania, which chimes in with Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin, which has been outed to be a BS false flag operation by the U.S. government and military, where we said that Vietnam or somebody attacked our ship in the Gulf of Tonkin, but that never even happened. So we used that myth as justification to start that war, to divide a country so that we could divide its people, right? Same thing in Korea. We divided a country so they can't unite and be stronger together. You also mentioned the Bureau of Censorship. Well, I think now it's just called the NSA, right? Because Edward Snowden, I recently watched an interview on Democracy Now! I'm not a super fan of Democracy Now! I think they used to be awesome and they're slipping, but they had Chris Hedges on, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. They had Max Blumenthal on, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And they had Edward Snowden on. And Snowden broke down that, every branch of social media was giving their communications to the US government. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all email accounts. And then I learned 75% of world communication comes through the US. So easily censored. And then you brought up something about the Japanese. Not many people know about the Japanese internment camps, which are concentration camps right here in the United States, where we locked up all Japanese Americans. We gave them 2 weeks to sell their home, sell their business, and get in line for a concentration camp. Wow. And I don't believe we've ever paid them back for their financial losses on that. And then speaking about how both parties are really one, we call it Obamacare, but Mitt Romney wrote that bill. It should be Romney Care, but that doesn't.
Man.
But that doesn't work for uniting people against Obama, right? So we call it Obamacare, and how dare that black guy do this, right? No. Pull back the lens once again. It was a white dude that wrote that bill. Obama just pushed it through. Oh my God! The like you said earlier, the curtain is coming back. The illusions are fading. People are waking up to. I mean, you can only lie so many times and get caught before people quit believing your BS, right? Back to you. That's all I got.
Yeah, I want to clarify about the Obamacare bill. Mitt Romney did not literally write it, but his bill that he put out for his state was pretty much the building blocks and foundation for Obama to pretty much look over and say, yeah, we like this. Let's go ahead and scale it up. And so back to what I was saying about Bush versus Kerry, what choice did we really have? You had the illusion of a choice. The most unpopular thing in the U.S. back when it was Obama running for his second term was the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. I was actually at a Tea Party rally in D.C. the day it was pushed through. It was massively unpopular. Also, a lot of lies told about that place and everything that was happening there. That was one of my first awakenings to realize that there's a lot of what now is everyone's calling fake news. But that was I had smaller awakenings, but that was one of the first big ones when you actually stand in the middle of something and realize they just flat out lied about it. But yeah, and all they had to do on the Republican end was literally put forward anybody other than Mitt Romney. But the biggest, most divisive bill where Republicans and Democrats alike were not big fans of it was the Affordable Care Act. And what do you know? You put forward the guy who pretty much gave Obama everything he needed to go and run with it. So again, just like Bush versus Kerry, what did you really have to be able to go and to vote against? Same goes when it was Bush versus Gore. We didn't really have too much. Pick your tie. That was pretty much all that we could really say at that point. Yeah, you never really have the choice that you think about. And then you look at FEMA also setting up camps throughout the U.S. I'm very curious. I don't know if you saw where they're now trying to walk it back and say it never happened, but pretty much Biden said that we're going to be sending troops in on about 3 different occasions where he talked about 2 troops over in Poland, but our troops, U.S. troops, not Polish troops, U.S. troops, saying when you go there, you'll see kids standing in front of a damn tank saying, I'm not leaving. And you'll be inspired by their resilience. And then he goes and he calls for basically a regime change and said he should not be allowed to remain in power. And then he puts out a message saying that America needs to prepare itself for the cold, long war ahead. Well, that doesn't look like a war where we're just simply saying like, okay, we're cutting you off economically, which by the way, at this point, the ruble within the course of about 2 to 3 weeks has pretty much 100% recovered, maybe 95% recovered if you want to be real conservative with your numbers. So I'm wondering what false flag is going to look like. You roll into everything we did between Tzatziki experiments when Clinton came out and apologized and admitted, yes, that is true. We were doing that when we had issues, like you said, with Japanese internment camps. Now you have FEMA making camps. You have the now confirmation where we originally walked back and said, there's no biolabs. Okay, there's no U.S. biolabs. Okay, there's U.S. biolabs, but they're level 2 stuff for like food safety grade. But we're very concerned, though, about these biolabs that they're going to go and make a chemical weapon that might be used against us. So we just keep walking ourselves more and more into a corner with stuff that was mentioned in this. People click on the link, you'll see they break down this article. The title of the article is one hell of a mouthful. But so yeah, their cash, and that all wraps back to this point of their casus belli, why they need to at this point go to war. And Cassius Foedorus, I believe is how you say it. I'm a bit of a dyslexic, never heard it said, only read it. But a call for alliance for all 3. One of them listed was America making chemical weapons, now, as is confirmed, over in Ukraine. And then I want to rewind also back several months to, I believe the lab was over in Philly, which scares me because that's about a little under 2 hours from where I live. They found in, I think it was a WHO lab, it might have been a CDC one. They found vials for, I believe it was smallpox. No, it wasn't smallpox. Dave, you probably know this one.
Not sure.
Okay. I believe it was for smallpox, real deadly virus, and then the actual virus itself. And you need to keep in mind, all that takes for a brand new pandemic to actually break out is someone to hold up the vial and go, "Hey, boss, what's this?" Oh shit, and drop it.
Yep.
So, but we
Yep.
have, but apparently now we're chemical and biological weapons are stuff that the U.S. is heavily involved with, some of which is in Ukraine. So, what's going to be the U.S.'s Cassius belly to be able to go in and convince people to go to war? Because we're so divided. And then what's going to be their cause to go and work those FEMA camps? It could very well be that they decide to go and say, well, there's been an outbreak of this deadly disease, so we're going to have everyone go to the pretty much ground zero to fight this war to keep Russia and China and India from taking. They'll try and avoid saying our weapons, but ultimately it'll come out later and be like, oh yeah, this one's kind of on us. We had this one going, and at that point, and they'll say like, oh well, this might be spreading over to U.S. and then be able to segment the nation more and more. That's all a possibility, but all we know is that I think there's 7 states where FEMA is not able to make camps. Well, I know one of them is in North Dakota. I don't know where the other 6 are. I'd have to look at that list again. But odds are you probably have a FEMA camps in your state if you're over here in the U.S. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to be the cause, but it looks like they've already the other powers that be, Russia, China, India, have put forward everything to say on this is why we're going to war. We, just like they said in this news article, pretty much just walked right into their bear trap that was labeled bear trap, and we played right into their hand. And now I think like I said, China is really more than anything wants the reunification of China and Taiwan, and the seas are their calmest in October and April. We just hit April, so I wouldn't be shocked to see everything pop off real heavy, real fast here soon. That's my prediction. Again, I'm not an economist. I don't work in the White House. I'm not part of a 3-letter agency. I don't have any extra inside knowledge. I'm just looking at everything that we see on the board, and I'm a little nervous about it.
Well, the planets are all aligned for that, right? Because we've been ramping up with more and more fervor. I want to touch on what you said about, labs and what about black sites, right? So this is under the guise of plausible deniability, right? If our government conducts their heinous activities in another country, then we can blame it on that other country because it's not directly a CIA operation, but we're funding people to do what we want them to do. So what you said, these biolabs in Ukraine, right? And then I saw something online where you could sign up to go fight in Ukraine against Russia. So volunteer to go to a toxic area, ground zero, like you said, and become infected, possibly. I'm not saying that's what's up, but I'm suspicious. And then that brings up the black sites for torture that we were using during right after 9/11, and that still exists to this day, right? So the CIA could conduct torture in other countries and say, well, we're not doing it. Abu Ghraib isn't our prison. Guantanamo Bay isn't our prison. It's in Cuba. It's in Iraq, right? And then, you mentioned something about your Great Awakening at a Tea Party protest. Brother, same thing. I was at a anti-war protest in downtown San Francisco against the Iraq war. There was at least 300,000 people there. bigger than any event by 5 times that I've ever seen in that city. All of for anybody who knows San Francisco, all of Market Street from the foot at the ferry building all the way to the Civic Center was filled with people elbow to elbow, the whole street and both sidewalks on either side, elbow to elbow. Then you get to the Civic Center and it's massively packed with a huge music festival. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I turn on the news that night. They say 50,000 people showed up to an anti-war protest in San Francisco. Bullshit. I saw 20,000 people at a Bernie Sanders rally in San Francisco. And they're trying to say it was only 30,000 more people. And I'm looking at this crowd of 20,000 people. It wasn't even a fraction of what I was involved in that anti-war protest. And then once again, you mentioned Tuskegee experiments. So man, you hit so many points. I filled up a whole page with notes of what I want to hit on after you triggered a thought process in line with the Tuskegee experiments, which have been proven that if we didn't give people syphilis, that we observed them with it, told them we were treating them, but we gave them no treatment and we just watched it progress and watched them die so we could see what the effects of syphilis were. That's evil. Well, under Clinton, we did something equally evil. And there's a documentary that goes into it called Beyond Treason. And it's fascinating. And what they talk about is Clinton signed an executive order mandating all soldiers to be open to taking experimental drugs. So who knows? And then all these soldiers that went to Iraq got a huge series of injections. So who's to know if that's what the cause of Gulf War syndrome was, which affected 200,000 soldiers, or if it was the fact that we were using depleted uranium ammunition, which is an international war crime, because every bullet that lands now toxifies the ground that it landed on for a half-life of 10,000 years. And, if people go down the rabbit hole, you'll learn that Iraq is having an absolute epidemic of birth defects. And if you care about people in general at all, it will break your freaking heart. One of these deformities that I saw was this child that looked like an amoeba. It looked like a jellyfish or an amoeba with a couple eyes on top. It was literally not even 4 inches thick and just a blob of flesh. It was so sad. And we did that. We did that to civilians. We killed 500,000 children in Iraq. Madeleine Albright just died. And there's all these people like, oh, God bless her. Da, da, da. But no, she wasn't. She was a heinous war criminal who was recorded on a TV show saying that she was asked directly, well, was it worth it for the 500,000 children that died? And she said, I believe it was worth it. What was worth it? What did we gain out of that? Oh, we privatized a bunch of Iraqi oil fields. And then once we were over there, we found new oil fields bigger than anything that existed previously. And to this day, Iraq only gets 25 cents on the dollar for its own oil. So you pull back and it's always about the money. Right? It's always about the money. What do you do in a simple murder investigation? Did the husband or wife just take out an insurance policy? Did anybody stand to gain financially? I mean, it's the first thing you look at, but we don't do that on these huge, massive crimes. Why? Oh, because it's not going to show us what the lamestream media wants us to be spoon-fed. That leads me right to Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Right? Like Edward Snowden, they might have a legit case there because he leaked government documents, whatever. But nothing that he leaked put us at risk. It was all just heinous information that, those 3-letter agencies did not want the public to know. Then you look at Julian Assange. He wasn't even the reporter. He was the publisher. So he's supposed to be immune from this BS. He's basically been on lockdown and he's enemy number 1. They want the man dead because he exposed all of this heinous crap. And if people aren't aware of the level to which this goes, check out the video on YouTube, Collateral Murder. I'm warning you, it's graphic it's not that graphic, but you will see people killed in real life. And these helicopter pilots are absolutely laughing about it. They're begging for authorization to open fire, and then they're laughing about it as they slaughter 10 people, 3 or 4 of which were Reuters journalists. They claimed that one guy had a gun. It was a camera. So unfreaking believable. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up in the next few. Maybe we could each just kind of do a closing statement. See if we have any more messages. We could play those. What do you think, Trav?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. It's about time for that. Yeah, I think pretty much right now, my big closing statement will be beware of April, maybe a week after it, or maybe 2 weeks after it. But general time frame to be aware of, I would say, given all the information we've launched in and what it looks like with the seas over in the Taiwan Strait, yeah, I would say be on high alert, be ready for possible false flag attacks, and be ready for possible like a move from China into Taiwan. I think once that happens, you're going to see everyone says Russia's stalled or they're not able to do anything. I think they're pretty much just moving slowly, entering their foot to the start line and waiting for China to make their move so that they can just go blitz. But that's my current prediction. I absolutely hope to God I am wrong, because once that happens, I think you will see a possibly. I think you would be forced to see a draft at this point, because that's the only way that they can try to. It won't work, but it can try to stabilize this economy and get things to go. They're in the war, so I don't know. I sure hope I'm wrong on all of this and that I just look back on this and say I sound like a complete and total crazy person, but it's just what I'm seeing lined up here. You can go ahead and check me out on Getter. I'll be hopefully posting another talk. Dave, we should do another currency talk and possibly maybe another one revolving a new world order slash the Great Reset, because what I talked to you before, I got more developments on that, and I would love to go over it with you.
Absolutely. I'm completely 100% down with that. I agree about the false flag attack. My gut was telling me when our government was telling us that they had confirmed information that Russia was going to invade Ukraine, I was convinced we were going to do a black flag operation then, because, oh, look, we said they're going to do it. Oh, look, now, something happened. Gives us the right to invade, right? But we're being much more sly than that. We're giving them tons of weapons, things like that. As far as Taiwan goes and Ukraine in the big picture, what gives us the right to dictate how any other country should operate, right? Ukraine used to be part of Russia. Taiwan used to be part of China. That's a fact, right? Here we are. We got Hawaii, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam. We have a bunch of conquered territories where those people don't get the right to vote in a U.S. election, but they're a quote-unquote U.S. territory. So once again, we're the biggest hypocrite on the block. Do as we say, not as we do. And that's evidenced by us being the only country in the world to have ever dropped a nuclear bomb in violence. And not only did we do it, we did it twice. And not only did we do it twice, both times on civilian populations, not just strategic nukes to take out a military target. And from what I've learned about that through another documentary series by Oliver Stone, The Untold History of the United States, what that points out is that Japan was about 2 weeks away from surrender. They were working on the terms of surrender. So the hypothesis is that we dropped 2 nukes on Japan's civilian population to intimidate the shit out of Russia, basically saying, look what we're going to do. Look how crazy we are. You want to mess with us? So that's all I got. Please check me out on all platforms. And Another Thing with Dave podcast on 23 different platforms. I'm in 46 countries now. Very humbled and pleased about that. I don't have anybody following me on my YouTube channel. Please do. If you like documentaries, I've got 1,200 of them there. That is And Another Thing with Dave on YouTube. I'm also And Another Thing with Dave on Facebook, on Instagram, and Dave Smith with 3 eyes on Twitter. I would love to do a talk with you, another circle back to the Great Reset and currency. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, man. It seems like by the time we can put together something for a talk, it seems like it's old news at that point. But yeah, let's work out.
So I've got people in Pakistan, in India, in Russia, you name it. 46 countries have listened to my podcast. I can't believe it. Not many people, but at least one person from each of those countries. That tells me that people are really interested in hearing the real dope on what's going on from somebody who lives inside this country, and not just what comes out of the idiot box by the lamestream media. So much love to people who tuned in. Keep researching, do your own investigations, go down that rabbit hole. I know sometimes it's overwhelming, but like I said before, an educated, united populace is a tyrannical government's worst fear. So please, let's try to educate people. Let's not focus on division lines. We are all one, ultimately. We're on this little rock hurling through space at 330,000 miles an hour or whatever in a corkscrew pattern. And it's a miracle that we're all here together in this moment, and we all need each other.
Amen. Thank you all for listening. Throw up your final likes for this. Share this conversation with as many people as you can. If you enjoyed it, let a friend know, let a friend listen. Sharing is caring. Why don't you go ahead and message either myself or Dave on any ideas on what you would want us to do, because I think it's pretty much considered official that we're going to be doing this either weekly or bi-weekly, and we'll be coming up with ideas, and I would love to hear you guys' inputs. I don't know about you, Dave.
Absolutely. I am a fiend for information. I am a documentary addict. I am thirsty for knowledge. So if I can find something that debunks something that I've been talking about, I'm all about it. I don't have an agenda. I just want to find the truth, and that's a constant journey. What is the truth? I don't know. I don't pretend to be knowing for sure, but like I said before, when you connect the dots, we seem to see an overarching, larger picture. Please share this on social media, on all the different social medias if you dig it. Please share it with friends if you dig it, and definitely let us know, either on a message through stereo, what topics you would like covered. Send us an article if you got that. Documentary link if you got that. I'm also on all social media, so you can you can contact me on message me on Instagram. Hit me that way if that's easier for you. But yeah, much love to everybody. Much love to you, Travis. Once again, this far exceeded my expectations of our talk, and I think that's the consistent thread when you and I talk. So I'm all about it.
Same here. We got a message. Why don't we play that and close on that note? Sounds good?
Sounds great.
All right, I'll open this up here.
Also, on the next upcoming talks, let's not forget about Corona. Where are we with that?
That's one of those things we got to be careful about. So I can talk in general terms about it, but I can't really say what I think on a specific level, or we will be canceled. That's been my experience in the past with COVID and with Ukraine. So, censorship is alive and well in the U.S., like Travis said. That's all I got.
My name is Travis Bushy, and I am the Thunder Monkey.
I am Dave Smith, and I am And Another Thing with Dave.
All right, much love to you guys.
Love, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. If you're digging what I'm doing, picking up what I'm throwing down, please do share with friends and on social media. Until next time, keep on digging for the truth.